Let me see if it's working. I am live. Oh, you know what? This isn't news and politics. This is this is education. This is going to be educational because I'm listening to a researcher and they have done the research for me. They have the information to give me. This is posted in a Discord server I'm in, and basically I'm just like, I'm looking at the thumbnail. I'm like, okay, why calories don't count? Well, you know what? Calories do count in a weight loss context. You see, you need to be in a caloric deficit in order to lose weight. And you need to be in a caloric surplus in order to gain weight. So, the problem I have when people say things like, oh, calories don't actually count and blah, 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 is that when I was trying to find a good way to lose weight, I avoided the whole calorie counting thing because I was like, no, 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 that's not gonna work. That's not gonna work for the longest time because I'm just like, oh wait, all I have to do is cut carbs. Well, I feel like shit when I cut carbs. All I have to do is fast. Well, I feel like shit when I fast. You know what I ended up doing? I ended up counting my calories in and my calories out. Honestly, I just ended up counting my calories in because when you are fairly active and you know your rough activity level and you adjust your caloric intake accordingly, you actually get to a point where you can kind of figure out, okay, well, if I eat about this much food in a day, this kind of food that isn't like super fatty, isn't like high in sugar, and is really satiating, it all kind of works out to where even if you aren't really counting calories, even if you aren't tracking it down exactly, because there are some foods that I will weigh out. I will weigh out things like high calorie dressings. I will weigh out things like peanut butter. Even though I use powdered peanut butter, I weigh that out because I want to know how much of this do I have. And even if I have like a lot more than just what I was expecting or whatever, I just weigh it out so that way I can be like, okay, I have this many servings, and it it helps me keep on track with what I'm actually intaking. And I don't know, it's gotten a lot easier to do too. Like I don't weigh things nearly as much as I did when I first started this. It's just like these little things where it's like, okay, I'm gonna have cereal this morning. Well, I should weigh out the cereal just to see how much cereal I actually have, and it'll be just little things like that. It'll be the things that are going to give me uh, a higher amount of calories than other things. I don't really weigh out my fruit, for example. That's kind of pointless. I can estimate that my banana is roughly like 120 calories when I eat one in the morning. I can estimate that an apple is roughly 50 calories. I can estimate that an orange is going to be roughly 30 to 60 calories. I can estimate those sorts of things. And, strawberries and other fruits, why bother, like, really weighing them out and counting them? Just assume that, like, a pound of strawberries is 150 calories because I will sit there, I'll eat the whole pound of strawberries. That's the kind of person I am. I love strawberries. Strawberries are fucking amazing. I hate it when they're out of season because they get so fucking expensive. There I go. I've already cussed in like the first little bit of the stream. So, in the future, if I ever had like monetization enabled, YouTube would see this and be like, "How dare you? You've said a mean word. You've said a no word at the beginning of the stream." It's fine though. I think I think they stopped caring after the 2 minute mark. So we're doing good. But let's see here. I'll just say Okay, I'm not a professional streamer. I don't know how I'm doing this. I don't want to like dox my Discord or anything. It's not my server, but uh I was basically saying, like, in response to like the thumbnail for this video, it can be inconsistent. You don't have to be perfect in counting your calories in and your calories out, but at the end of the day, your calories in, calories out is what determines whether or not you lose weight. And, you know, when you are someone who is starting where I was starting at, which is I was at 265 pounds, and I'm down where I'm maintaining roughly 200. And like right now, today's my birthday. And this whole past week has been really bad because Labor Day weekend happened. We had family over, all these things, and we had so much good food around. Oh, it was so good. And like we went to some stores in our area that have some really really good they like get the local beers and stuff, and they get the stuff that I can't get like in my neck of the woods. One of the things, the one I'm drinking tonight, it's called Red Bud Blueberry Acai Lime. It's a Berliner Weiss beer, and uh it's a sour, and it's really good. It is really good. It's like I'm drinking a Warhead, and it's amazing. I love it. I uh how did I find out about it? It was forever ago. It was when I cut my hair because I had my uncle do it when he was in town from Houston. And basically, like, they had gone to the liquor store and they'd found it, and then we saw it at the market, so we were like, "All right, I'm getting that." I also got the Nitro Peanut Butter Cup Stout. I love Nitro. They might be a bunch of lefties, but they make some damn fine beer. I don't care, like, they're lefties or not. I don't know. I found it funny though. I think I was reading theirs. I'm gonna have to Google this now. I'm not like changing the window or anything. I'm just gonna Google this. Left hand brewer. I'm talking about dieting and weight loss and all this stuff. Okay. What is there about? Yes, I'm of legal drinking age. About us. It started with the humble homebrew kit. It's like, remember, it's like a co-op, if I was remembering correctly. When the mainstream goes right, we go left. When everyone was adding concentrates to wheat beer, we added hand juice ginger for good juju. Something something something. But if I remember correctly, um, it is like a co-op, and I bet that like it would be a lot of fun to hang out with these people. I don't know. I just feel like I could hang out with them and enjoy the things that they make. Let's see. Behind every beer is our team works hard with a single vision in mind. Uh, Resumes for advertising. Okay, I'm just trying to figure out if I was correct, because I don't remember it. I don't remember if it was left hand or if it was something else. But I remember one of them that was really good is like a co-op somewhere, and I can't remember which one it is. Oh well, I'll figure it out later. It doesn't really matter. What matters is this video. This is the thing I'm supposed to be talking about. I've already wasted 10 minutes rambling about uh beers and I don't know. I think that's plenty of time to talk about beer in this conversation. What's the other one? Oh yeah, dragon's milk's really good. Dragon's milk's really good. But it's like it's anywhere from $12 to $16 a 4 pack. So it's like it's got to be like a good time for it. See, I just got to figure out how to do some of those effects, and then I'll be like a professional. I can make my own intros or whatever.
Thank you so much, Pete. Thank you to the RI for allowing me to be here, and I'm here to speak about why calories don't count. I know, don't. Everyone, stop. I'll explain. Okay, I've already had it.
Now, I this is unrelated, but I'm really sad because I had frameless glasses like that, the ones where they don't have the frame on the bottom. I'm sad that I broke them. I want them again.
Enough problems online with with the title, but hopefully, I'll clarify why calories don't count. My name is Giles. I'm based at the University of Cambridge, where I'm a geneticist, and I'm a geneticist that works on body weight. Okay, and but this is not what I'm going to talk to you about today, because while I understand the biological variation of why people are different sizes and why people behave differently around food, ultimately we have to also figure out and understand the environment, in particular the food environment. Genes interacting with the environment. And tonight I want to talk about the environment, and I want to talk about our food, and I want to talk about the way we our relationship with our food and how we actually refer to it, particularly with this word, the calorie. And so this is what tonight's going to be about. My book, Why Calories Don't Count, it's just been published today. So this is, in effect, it's not a de facto launch. It is a launch. And I launched my first book at the my second book at the Royal Institution. So I'll go for about, I don't know, 40, 45 minutes, which will leave us plenty of time for questions. Okay. So welcome everybody. And I'm really grateful that you have taken the time out to come and to come and actually.
I guess right now this would be the part where I'm like, this is the Greg Doucette thing that I agree with, which is relationships are with people, not food. I like that line. Though I guess viewing uh you can view it in different ways though.
Listen to me. So why calories don't count? Now I think calorie counts are ubiquitous. This is not a surprise. So I've got listed here on the left hand side is the UK EU compliant labeling. On the right hand side is US FDA compliant labeling. This is the back of pack labeling up here. And this is, we're still so far in the EU. So all of these rules we still apply to, and actually we're not, but these rules we still apply to. And this is the compliant front of pack labeling. And here are the calorie counts. So immediately what you see is you see a number of different units. You see the numbers, that's fine, but you see on the energy you have kj, what's that? Kcal, and you can see that kj, kcal. And in the US compliant labeling, you actually have the word calories.
Now on this, I already know what all this is. It's just see the K joules, whatever. I don't know what that is. I don't need to know what that is, but I can probably do like a translation here. Okay, so based on this cereal packaging and based on this grilled burger packaging, see, I already know that kcal is just calories. That's just what it is. So this kilojoules, I'm assuming it's joules, is you know, higher than what in outside the US. And so other places are using the kilojoules, and we are using the kcal. So the kcal and calories are the same thing. I know that because I've had like a lot of like international food shipped to my house. It's called Vegemite. I had never tried Vegemite, and then I tried it. And I should get some more Vegemite. Vegemite is really, really good. Um, like I didn't go crazy with it like I've seen people do on like the internet videos where they like try it and they slather it on like real thick. I didn't try it like that. I just put like, little, like I would put some butter on toast. It was really good. I mixed it with like an egg on top, and oh, it just mixed together really, really well. If you've never tried Vegemite or Marmite, I haven't tried Marmite. I don't know if there's like an actual like significant difference in taste, but it's like that yeast spread. Um, it's very salty. That's what it is. It's very salty, and if you mix it with the right things, it just comes together really well. I think that if you're someone that likes to put like avocado on your toast, add some Vegemite to that. Oh man, it's really good.
Okay, so do all of these nomenclature mean? And so I thought before we start the talk, we may as well just deal with what an actual calorie. What is a calorie? What is a calorie? So now there is a small c calorie. At the risk of sounding like I'm on Sesame Street, okay, a small c calorie is a heat calorie. So this was the original way that the calorie was defined, and it was defined as a unit of heat. And it's the amount of energy you need to raise the temperature of 1 milliliter of water 1 degree Celsius at sea level. Okay. Now, the calories I'm going to be speaking about tonight, and most of us talk about when we bandy around the word calories, are food calories. Okay, now food calories are also known as a big C calorie. I'm not making this up. Okay, a big C calorie, or which is 1,000 small C calories. So it's sometimes called a kilocalorie or kcal, which is where those numbers came from. And this is the food calorie. And this is the amount of energy required to raise the temperature of 1 liter of water 1 degree
God,
Celsius
my glasses are
at sea level. But
spotty.
just for the avoidance of doubt, for the rest of the talk, and in fact, in the book, when I say the word calorie, okay,
I
um,
just made them
I mean
foggy.
food calorie. I mean a kilocalorie. Now, a calorie or a kilo, small little calorie, is not a SI unit. It's a unit of energy, but it's not an SI unit. The
I
SI
was
units
right.
are going to be in joules. And so one small C calorie, the heat calorie, is 4.184 joules or roughly 4.2 joules. And so therefore the food calorie, the kilocalorie, is 4.2 kilojoules or kj, which is where those numbers come from. So a calorie can either be a big C calorie, a kcal, or kj, and that will then be calories times 4.2. Clear as mud? That's the nomenclature. But we're going to be talking about, specifically, we're going to be talking about calories tonight. So here is the question. Okay, so this is the big question. Why don't calories count? So it's because of this. Because this is an equation, such as it is, it's not really an equation, is that the number of calories actually in food does not equal the number of calories you see on the side of the pack. That's the okay, which does not equal the number of usable calories we actually finally get out of food.
Okay, so here's where I'm already going to have like a small disagreement. I think that if if I'm remembering it correctly, you can't be too far off on your, you know, calorie on the label. You have your food item, whatever it is, and they have a serving measured for you in grams. And so you're not going to greatly exceed the caloric amount of that serving in grams. Uh, if it's up or below, it's going to be within a 5 calorie limit. And sure, you can have a bunch of these little tiny 5, 10 calorie offsets just throughout the day, and that could add up to a lot of extra calories. But at the end of the day, you're getting a very good rough estimation of how many calories are in the food. And if you're going on a diet and you're already planning on a rough intake amount, that is really just you're Your goal is to just kind of ballpark it. You can get as exact as you want, but I think ballparking it's probably the most reasonable thing to do. I don't think that there's really like much of a point in stressing about every little thing. Uh like one of the things I've done just for fun is I did weigh out like what does 100 grams of spinach look like? That's what I wanted to know. And it's a lot of spinach. Like you can eat so much spinach in 100 grams, it's absolutely insane. I was just curious. I'm like, what's 100 grams of spinach look like? I if I hadn't cooked it, I couldn't have eaten it. That's what I'm saying. Okay. And so anyways, that's a unrelated thing, but it's just you're not going to greatly exceed this caloric amount that's on the side of the package. You have the serving size, you have what they're using to get that number, and it might be off for sure. There's going to be rounding up, rounding down. Even those things that are 0 calories, air quotes, 0 calories, they usually have uh anywhere from 3 to 5 calories in them. And they just round it down because it's a no calorie food, basically. So it's like, it's going to be inaccurate, but I don't see where this is not counting them. It's just all part of the calories in, calories out equation.
Okay, and this is an absolute critical important thing to try and understand, and trying to understand why this is the case requires us to actually get our head around the concept of caloric availability. So caloric availability is the amount of calories that you can actually drag out of a food versus the total number of calories in the food, in the food to begin with. Okay, so let me just give you some examples so you can understand what I'm talking about. Imagine 100 calories of sugar. So if you eat 100 calories of sugar, the availability of sugar, which means that how many calories you get when you eat 100 calories of sugar, is about 95 calories. So the availability of sugar is 95%. Okay, the caloric availability of sugar. Now, when you actually eat sweet corn, okay, we all love sweet corn, corn on the cob, and then look in the loo the next morning, it is quite obvious we have absorbed nowhere close to 100 calories of sweet corn. But yet, if you take sweet corn, you desiccate it, you convert it into a corn meal, and you make a corn tortilla, you make corn bread. Suddenly, because of the way you have processed the kernels of corn, you've done something with them, you've changed its structure. Suddenly, a far greater percentage of the calories in exactly the same source food, corn, is made available because it's now in the shape of a corn tortilla or in the form of cornbread. This is what caloric availability is. And so, therefore, what food you eat, it does actually make a difference because how your body eventually tries to get the calories out differs from food to food. Okay. So, how are calories empirically measured? Okay, so now this is dealing with the total number of calories in a food. How are they measured? Well, I mentioned that they're a unit of heat. And so, what they're actually, this is still true today. Okay, the most accurate way to count every single calorie in a food is something called the bomb calorimeter. All right. Now, the bomb calorimeter, the eponymous bomb, is just as unsophisticated as it sounds. It involves a sealed container over here, the eponymous bomb, okay, where you put a sample of food. All right. Now, wet food, you have to desiccate, remove the water, because water has no caloric value, at least to at least it does have energy, obviously E equals mc square, but it doesn't have actually any caloric value to humans. So you can just evaporate off the water, and what you do is you put them into this sealed container and you burn it. Now this sealed container is pressurized to 30 atmospheres, 30 times the atmosphere here on Earth, with pure oxygen to ensure that everything is burnt to an absolute crisp. You carbonize the food, right? Surrounding this is a known volume of water. This water jacket is a known volume of water. And so what happens is you put a known weight of food into the bomb calorimeter, you burn it to a crisp, and then you just simply measure the temperature rise in the water jacket next door. And because 1 calorie, 1 liter of water, 1 degree Celsius, you then know how many calories there are in the food. So this is how you measure all of the calories that are actually in the food. So well, it's a unit of energy. Surely all calories should be equal. Ah, you know what the problem is? Human beings are not bomb calorimeters. Now, our digestion process is actually, aside from the stomach, which has a it's a pH value of 1.5, like battery acid. So I wouldn't stick your hand in there. Um, Digestion is actually a relatively time consuming but gentle process. It's in effect one very long chemical reaction. There's a bit of chewing at the end, but at the end of the day, it just goes through, and enzymes and acids and everything are thrown at it. And then at the end of 24 hours, everything is then digested. Not everything. Okay. We digest and actually absorb it. So it's actually a relatively gentle process. We are not furnaces. We are not a bonfire. We cannot extract all the calories out from food. So this gives us A. The bomb calorimeter gives us A, the number of calories actually in food.
So it gives us the numbers of calories actually in the food. And that means probably on the side of the pack, they're going to be estimating it. They're going to round it up or they're going to round it down, but most likely they're going to round it down because they're trying to look a little bit better than they actually are, you know? That's what they're going to do. They're going to round it down. You know they're going to round it down. I can already guarantee this is what's going to happen.
Okay, how do we get to B? How do we get to the number of calories on the side of the pack of every item of food you buy today, prepackaged food? You have these numbers. Okay, where do those numbers come from? All right, well, for that we have a chap named Wilbur Atwater, and he was a professor of chemistry at Wesleyan University in Connecticut in the late 1800s. Okay, and what he did was he appreciated and the bomb calorimeter had been invented by the time, and Atwater, okay, realized the sweet corn effect. Okay, he realized that obviously we were not absorbing all the calories we were eating, and he was trying to figure out a way of actually trying to determine, well, how much food, how many calories do we actually end up absorbing into our body. So what he did between 1880 and 1900, and I'm going to tell you the story, and I want you guys to reflect on this the next time you feel like complaining about your job. Okay, so what Atwater did was he used a lot of bomb calorimetry. So what he did was first he burnt a whole heap of food. Okay, everything: beef, chicken, sweet corn, etc., etc. All right, and tried to work out the heats of combustion of each of the various things, how much in terms of fat, carbohydrates, and protein. He then fed those exact same foods to a human being, a fasted human being. It then went through the human being's system. And then the next morning, he then went to collect the poop, okay? And then he burnt the poop, okay? And so what he then did was now he knew how much total calories went in the top end. He knew how much calories came out the bottom end using bomb calorimetry. You subtract one from the other, and you get the amount of calories you actually absorb. Don't complain about your job. 20 years he did this. So what he then did was he calculated the heat of combustion. So this is the bomb calorimetry number, and you can see it gives a certain number: fat 9.4, 9.3, carbs depending on whether it comes from a plant or an animal, and protein. You can see these numbers here. Then after the subtraction, he then got these numbers in effect. He got 8.95, 8.35 to 8.95 of calories per gram of fat, anywhere from 3.8 to 4 for carbohydrates, and around 3 to 4. It's just kind of like a little bit of wiggle room here, but he just rounded the numbers up. Okay, and so the numbers, and these are called the Atwater factors. You can Google it. The Atwater factors are 9 calories for every gram of fat, 4 calories for every gram of carbohydrate, and 4 calories for every gram of protein.
So I already knew that bottom part. I didn't know where that came from. That was a very fascinating story though. I do wonder like what he did like as far as like the whole process. It depends on when it happened cuz I don't know the time period for all of this. Uh cuz if this was like you know the more recent it was, the more likely they did like try to be sanitary about it. I don't know. But I guess like if you're a scientist and you're into like all this stuff and you're really fascinated by it, as gross as it was probably like I don't know, he probably had fun doing it, like not a lot of fun. But he was probably like really happy with the work.
Oh, for alcohol, those just in case you care. He also worked that out. That's 7 calories for every gram of alcohol. So the scary thing is alcohol is actually approaching the caloric content of fat. So the numbers of every single pack. This was in 1900. He published these numbers. Okay, together with these huge lists of food. Um,
Oh, so it was
and
like
if you go to the pack of
1800s.
any food you have in your cupboard at the moment and look and actually try and do the math, you calculate how much protein, you look at a pack, oh, how much fat, how much sugar, the numbers are still based on these 120-year-old factors, okay, that are there. There's a little bit of wobble, a little bit of wiggle room around the protein amount because we have changed into trying to figure out how much protein there is in a given food. But basically, all of the calorie accounts on the side of the pack are based on these numbers from 1900, from 120 years ago. Okay, so these are the Atwater factors, the 944 factors, and that's how we get to B. But, and here's the big but, they do not equal C. And I guess why? Why do they not equal C? Why are those Atwater factors? First of all, they appear to be very round numbers, which he rounded up, I want to point out. But as it turns out, there's more to actually be learned about this. And it has to do with the caloric availability, in particular, of two elements of food, of protein and of fiber. Okay. And I want to spend a little bit of time just unpicking this.
I want to talk about fiber. I have a feeling that the fiber is going to be very, very not digestible because I just have a feeling that's where it's going because we already had the sweet corn example. Okay, you eat corn on the cob, most of it just runs right through you. It's like the great mighty Pooh from Conker's Bad Fur Day. Sweet corn is the only thing that kind of ruins him because he can't actually get rid of it. Uh, Speaking of just like other things, though, speaking of dehydrating things, I gotta go get a water. So I'm gonna figure out what do I do while I'm away. I will hide the window and I will put up a thing that I was working on. Let's see, where is it? Quick access. There it is. There we go. I got back just in time. All right. So protein, let's see.
So protein. Let's deal with protein. Now here's the interesting thing about protein. A calorie of protein makes you feel fuller than a calorie of fat, than a calorie of carb, in that order. Okay, 1 calorie. Okay, so the question is why? And in part, this has to do with our understanding of what I call our food to poop tube, our gastrointestinal tract. Now, if I were doing this live, I am doing this live, but actually in the theater, I would now be able to wow you with my prop here, which I always bring along. And this, ladies and gentlemen, and I have the pattern, and I'm very happy to send this to people, is a live size knitted human gut, the human food to poop tube. So this is the mouth. It's a very big mouth. Okay, and then this is the esophagus, and this collection of pillows here are your organs. So this is the stomach, this is the pancreas, this is the gallbladder. The green bit is the gallbladder, and this is your liver. Then after it comes through the stomach, here's the small intestine. But the small intestine is very long. I am pulling. This is going on forever. Okay, can you see? I'm just going at full speed until we get, this is the appendix, until we get to the large intestine and out the other side. So all that is origamied into us. Okay, but we have to understand this, because what happens is the longer something takes to digest and deal with within our gastrointestinal tract, because of the different hormones that are released, the fuller we feel. Okay, that pretty much is a basic principle. And both of this is going to be true for both protein, which is chemically the most complex of the three macronutrients, protein, fat, and carbohydrates. So it just takes time and energy in order to pull it off. Okay, so therefore protein makes you feel fuller. The second is fiber. Now, fiber, there's two types of fiber. There is soluble fiber and there's unsoluble fiber. Soluble fiber is stuff like pectin, the stuff that you end up and solidifying jelly or jam with. And then there is unsoluble fiber, and that is just fiber that we think about. Okay, fiber in celery and in for that matter, sweet corn. And because it travels all the way down the gut and not the other side, it actually also has the effect of making you feel fuller. Okay, so food that generally takes longer to digest makes you feel fuller. So those are two: protein and fiber. Okay, for these very reasons.
This is why eggs are very satiating, is because they're the egg whites are very high protein and the egg yolks are high in fat. Like I'm pretty sure the yolks are pretty much entirely fat. Uh, and so like you eat egg, and it's the volume of the food plus the compound, the like just the chemical makeup of it and how it goes through your body, and that's why like a lot of the ways you can like reduce your caloric intake while still maintaining fullness when you're just dealing with egg is you maybe use 2 whole eggs with the whites from like 3 other eggs. And it's like you have more food there, but it's not as bad as eating like 5 eggs at the same time. You're still gonna get pretty full from it.
And what happens is when the gastrointestinal tract, your food to poop tube, releases gut hormones, we know of about 20 gut hormones. 18 of them make you feel fuller. And so these signals, then as it works, as food works down in your intestine, they release these hormones, it signals to your brain. Your brain then feels fuller. It makes you eat
Oh man, y'all didn't see the
correspondingly
thing.
less. Okay.
I'm
And so
sorry.
this is broadly why, from a digestive reason, why a reason why protein and fiber helps you make yourself feel fuller. It has to do with one part of its caloric availability. Now that's the digestion element. Okay, so now we're going to have an interlude before I come to the metabolism element. So let me give you an interlude. We've been talking about the heats of combustion, so the amount of heat that it gives off within a bomb calorimeter. Have you given any thought about how much energy it takes to boil a kettle of water? Okay, so what kettles are UK kettles are roughly 1.5 liters, 1.7 liters, but we seldom fill them to the top. So let's say a liter. Okay, how much energy does it take to boil a liter of water? Now, given that 1 calorie is 1 degree Celsius in 1 liter of water. Okay, so therefore it must take 100 calories to boil 1 liter of water. And the moment you say it out loud, you're going, "Pardon me? Are you serious?" Yes. If you actually put it on a stove, put it on an open flame. If you actually click it, you imagine, wow, there's a lot of energy going in there to boil the water because it takes time and everything. 100 calories. Now, what is 100 calories? So, just to give you an example, 100 calories is roughly the amount of calories in an egg. Okay, a hen's egg, medium-sized hen's egg, 100 calories. Just thinking all of that energy to boil the water. And that's exactly right. So imagine, and we know that most of us eat at least 2,000 calories a day, 2,000, maybe 3,000 calories a day. So if you do that math, then 2,000 calories is the amount of energy needed to get 20 liters of water from 0 degrees Celsius to 100 degrees Celsius to boiling. And keep in mind that this is the coming out of a tap. It's not 0 degrees Celsius. It's probably what, 15 degrees. So you don't actually need a lot of energy in order to boil water. You do, but why aren't we boiling? I guess is the question. How come we can have 2,000 calories of food and not boil, given that we only carry 5 liters of blood in us, 5 to 5.5 liters of blood in us? Okay, so now this is the interlude. It's because of the way we metabolize our food and the way we harness energy from the food. And we don't just burn it all, okay? Because in effect, what happens if you have a chunk of wood, of charcoal, of what have you, and you burn it, you're breaking the carbon bonds, heat is given off. Okay, that's where the energy, the vast majority of energy are in these carbon bonds. You break them, it gives off energy, right? And it gives off energy all at once because it's a bonfire, okay? Like a bomb calorimeter. This will not be compatible with life. So what we do is our body manages to metabolize the food and then store the energy in reusable little units called ATP. Okay, now ATP is adenosine triphosphate. That's the adenosine group. This is this complex structure over here. The key bits are these three phosphate groups. The phosphate is a phosphorus, oxygen, O, and H, and these three. And it takes a lot of energy. It stores a lot of energy in this particular bond. And so what happens? Consider ATP a fully charged battery, and ADP, adenosine diphosphate. When you lose this phosphate group, when it gets cleaved off, okay, a puff of energy gets given off, poof, okay, and that puff of energy is then enough for you to then do work. All right, this ADP is then here again, and then you then have energy that has been extracted from food and converts the ADP by sticking a phosphate group back onto it to become ATP again, and this then gets recycled. So ATP is everywhere in our body, everywhere. It kind of moves in and moves out. It's made in the mitochondria, but it's everywhere in the body. Okay, and every day this is recycled. ATP goes and so it stores it, and when you need it, puff. You need it, puff. We go through our own body weight in ATP every single day. Recycle ATP, ADP, ATP, ADP. Now these are little molecules. Okay, can you imagine how much 75 kilos, actual kilos of ATP is? It's a lot. And that is how we function, right? So we take the energy and we put them in the little ATP things and only puff them out as and when we need it. And the process that actually does this is called intermediary metabolism. And I'm really sorry here for going into hard biochemistry. And for those medics and biochemists out there, this may trigger PTSD because it did for me when I was thinking about it. Okay, so intermediary metabolism is what we do to actually extract the energy from these nutrients, the macronutrients of amino acids, glucose, and fatty acids. Because amino acids, which is a breakdown of protein, glucose, which is a breakdown of starch, and fatty acids, which is a breakdown of fat, are not they're not energy units. They're not units of energy. They're units of nutrients. You then have to take the nutrients, break the carbon bonds to release the energy to make the ATP. Now, here's the thing about protein and why protein is special. Okay, so glucose and fatty acids, they're organic molecules, which means they're made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And when we eat these intermediary nutrients, when we eat the foods and they're digested into nutrients and pass into our blood, there are one of two fates that can occur depending on your feeding state. You either store them, and glucose is stored as glycogen until it's full. Otherwise, it becomes fat. Fatty acids then becomes fat. Okay. Now, or you can burn it, and you can burn it in this direction in order to make ATP. Okay. But glucose and fatty acids are only made of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and so they're interchangeable as long as you have the enzymes to do it. Protein There are a couple of interesting things about protein. First of all, we don't have a store of protein. You might say, well, I have my muscles. Yeah, but that's functional. So the vast majority of our body, aside from water, is made of protein. Okay. So all of the protein we eat is functional. It's not a store. Fat is a store. It releases the fat as you need it, carbs, but protein is functional. It's either there to support you, put you there, repair organs, okay, or build if you're pumping iron. If you don't use it, it needs to be converted into fat. Okay, so there's no storage of protein. Protein has to be converted into fat in order to be stored as energy. That the problem with protein, it contains carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, but it also contains nitrogen. Okay, and so what your body has to do before it can sort out, before you can move the protein into fat, it has to strip off the nitrogen. It strips it off, it converts it into urea, and then we wee it out. Okay, this is why we have urea, uric acid when we actually wee. It's all the nitrogen that's been stripped off the protein. So because of this a process of having to strip out the nitrogen, it takes work to handle protein that doesn't need to be there when you're dealing fatty acids and when you're dealing with fat and carbs. And this work costs energy. So for every 100 calories of protein that you eat, every 100 calories of protein you eat, you only ever absorb 70 calories. 30 calories, 30% of the protein you eat, protein calories you eat, are needed to handle protein, and it's given off as heat. Okay, so just by looking at the back of the pack, the protein calories are 30% off already. All right, because these are not the Atwater. The Atwater.
So this is like this is all over my head, but the way he's explaining it, this is where I know like some people get like super obsessed with the calorie count, and they even like add in the thermic effects of food and stuff like that, and it's like yeah, that's like to me, I just don't even bother with it. I just go based on the side of the box, and it's just a ballpark, and it worked for me. It's worked so far. I can tell you, like, the reason I am still at 200 pounds and I'm not below 200 pounds is because I've been getting back into like really bad habits of like eating way too much cereal and eating like I've had a lot more pizza lately. It's just little things like that, and I'm pretty sure like if I got back on my actual like good diet wagon and I was eating right again, I would probably go back down more. I will say like maintaining weight lost is actually not as hard as I thought it would be. The main thing is, I think that people lose the weight too fast. I think that's what's happening because it took me a year to lose 60 pounds. It took me a year to do it, and I just can't eat as much as I used to. So it's just I think that factors into the weight gain, weight loss thing as well. Just the fact that if you're hungry enough to eat that much, then that'll also add into things. But this is definitely like where people start adding in like, well, I calculated like the grams and everything. I even measured it all out, and after measuring it all out, I even added in my thermic effect of food. And then you'll have some people that are like, and I added in the afterburn effect from my 5 minutes of high intensity interval training. It's like 5 minutes of high intensity interval training. How many rounds of that did you do? Oh, just one. Okay.
Took into account a number of different things, but he took into account the nitrogen, but he never took into account the heat that is required, the energy required to actually pull off the nitrogen. And that, in very many ways, is why protein also makes is more satiating than fat or carbs, because fats and carbs, well, fat in particular is very energy dense. It takes almost no heat. Between 90 is 98% to nearly 100% available, which means only a little bit off is given off as heat because fat is very efficient and is our primary fuel store. Carbohydrates Well, it depends if you're talking about sugar, the white powdered stuff, or if you're talking about a complex carb with fiber in it, right? And so if you're talking about sugar, it's probably 95, 96% available. Okay. Whereas if you're talking about complex carbs, a slice of wholemeal toast, for example, then we're dealing 90% available, which means that for every 100 calories of wholemeal toast you're eating, it costs 10 calories in order to sort the wholemeal toast out. Okay. Caloric availability. This is the business, the energy required to the cost of doing business, ladies and gentlemen, right? So how about now we think about, so that's the concept of caloric availability when we actually deal with macronutrients. But if you actually then begin to think about it, you can begin to paint this concept of caloric availability over popular diets that are actually there. So I study energy balance. I study body weight. Now, I think we've all seen this. So this is otherwise known as the first law of thermodynamics, meaning that we can't magic calories in from anywhere and we can't magic the calories away, right? So our body is going to be a balance between how much we eat and how much we burn because it's physics. It's a fundamental law. It's a how. Now, there is a complexity, and all the complexity lies in the why. Why do people behave differently around food? Why do some people respond to stress by eating? Other people respond to stress by not eating. That's what I study, right? The genetics of actually why people behave differently around food. And so, put simply, some people find it more difficult to say no to food and eat more. And so, therefore, the why influences the how, which is the physics. Therefore, we have people that have small, medium, and large. Okay, so that is in a nutshell what I work on. But in essence, the only way to lose weight, ladies and gentlemen, okay, is to create a caloric deficit, is to absorb fewer calories than you burn. That is how you're going to lose weight. And so at the end of the day, all diets, including a number of fad diets that are out there, which I'm going to deal with in a second, that work, manage to create a caloric deficit. Every single diet that works falls into three categories. Okay, now they're not mutually exclusive because you can mix and match them. Okay, there are diets which are purposefully caloric. In other words, they say it on the side of tins. This is to eat less. It's a caloric restriction diet. I'll give you some examples in a second. Then there are diets that are high in protein, and there are diets that are high in fiber. Okay, and I'm going to argue that all diets that work will have at least one or two of these characteristics that I hear.
My diet had all three. It was restricting my calories to roughly around 2000. 2000, I don't remember what it was. But basically, like, I went all the way from like 2,700 calories. And I just slowly ate it down to like 2,300 calories, which is, I think that's where I still am roughly when I'm actually like trying again, which is really funny. And a lot of it was just like I made sure like I didn't overeat too much. I stayed like I have wiggle room in that. And then I do eat a lot of protein, and then I also eat a lot of fiber because the fiber is very satiating, the protein's very satiating, and then you mix it in with your healthy fats and your very complex carbs that are high in fiber, and it is a very good diet model to follow. So this is what I was interested in. So yeah, he's not a crazy person.
Which is the why they work. So caloric restriction, which I'm not going to talk about largely in this because this is it does what it says on the tin. So you could go on a low calorie diet. These are so-called LCDs, or very low calorie diets. Those are the shakes. Um, and 800 calorie shakes and things like that, and clearly you're going to lose weight. Weight Watchers and SlimFast, so these are group support things which you can go and you measure food, and you have sin foods and non-sin. You're trying to eat less. Okay, this is the point. And then there's intermittent fasting. We can debate intermittent fasting about the additional metabolic benefits you may actually get.
The main problem with fasting that I find is that I personally feel that whenever I've done it, it's just one of these things where it's like, okay, well, I've not eaten in so long that I feel like shit. And when I start eating, and if I can't stop eating, I'm going to eat myself. I'm gonna eat way too much, and I'm gonna feel like too full afterwards.
from it. Okay, and it is a debate, but ultimately, a primary reason why it works is because it creates a caloric restriction. Okay, so these are caloric restriction diets. Let's put those aside for a second. Okay, let's deal with the mother of all, the popular diets that exist. These are the high protein diets. But what is interesting? Oh, okay, high protein. Well, first of all, how high is high? Okay, now as it turns out, there is no industry standard, but broadly speaking, if you have more than 16% of your total calories at water calories, okay, from uh, uh, um, from protein in your diet, then this is considered a high protein diet. Okay,
That sounds odd to me because I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, 20 grams of protein is 400 calories, which is 1/5 of the 2,000 calorie average. Am I right on that? Yeah, I'm right on that. So yeah, that would be 20% of your intake. So that would be high protein if you're getting 20 grams of protein in a day.
okay, so we typically are working on 14 to 15% typically. So anything above 16% is considered a high protein diet. Um,
I just don't know how you would manage it. It's like I I I just don't know how anyone would eat under 20 grams in a day. I don't know. But it would also depend on like where you're eating at, I guess. That I'm just like looking at it, I'm trying to just consider that in the average context cuz it would be it would be 20% of your intake if you had 20 grams of protein, which is usually what you find in a protein bar. That is. So if you just eat one of those a day, you're technically on a high protein diet.
But the interesting thing about high protein diets is that the most popular ones don't even have the word protein in it. They are low carb, high fat diets. Hashtag LCHF. You go to Instagram and do it, and you'll find millions upon millions of hits. And these range anywhere from Atkins, which is what most of us would have heard of, Dukan, Southwest, Keto, Carnivore, others exist. But what I've done is I picked the most popular ones and I've listed them in order of carbohydrate restriction, the severity of carbohydrate restriction. And so all of these diets, in effect, have different amount of evangelical. Uh, uh, they think that carbs are poisonous. Okay, for lack of a better term. And Atkins, all the way to carnivore. Carnivore is obviously the most severe of all because all you eat is meat. But what happens is when you remove carbohydrates, of which for a typical diet are actually quite a high percentage of your diet, you have
Yes, that in my diet, when I was being good and I was behaving, I was tracking it all. My diet was very, very high in carbohydrates. It was like I believe it was the most significant source of calories. It was like half of my calories in a day were coming from carbs, and then the rest of it was protein and fat. So that is true.
have to replace the calories with something else. And people try and replace it with fat, but fat per se is actually quite unpalatable. So what you end up doing, in addition to increasing the fat, is actually increasing the amount of protein you eat. So LCHF primarily works for weight loss. I'm not talking about glucose management, okay, for weight loss because it's high in protein, caloric availability, you feel fuller, you eat less, you lose weight.
Now, from what I understand, though, the keto diet specifically was made for like glucose management. And I do hear people say that like they go carnivore and it benefits them in some way, which I'd be interested in trying it, I guess. But I don't know. I couldn't give up the bread. I couldn't give up oatmeal. I couldn't give up I couldn't give up fruit. I couldn't give any of it up.
Okay. Now then, there are hashtag LCHF diets, but with complicated backstories. Okay, so they don't say they're LCHF, but they actually are gluten free. Now, look, I realize that 1% of the human species are celiac, allergic to gluten, and so stay away from it. There's probably another 3 to 4% of the world who are genuinely gluten intolerant, and this ranges anywhere from being slightly farty to severe intestinal distress. By all means, please stay away from gluten. But up to 25% of us here will buy gluten free just as a product every single day. In fact, so much so it's become a monetizable thing. They've taken now foods that never had gluten to begin with and labeled them gluten free. Gluten free rice does not have gluten. It never had gluten. It never will have gluten. Gluten free water. Gluten free shampoo. Google it. I'm giving you the 411 here, guys. It's true.
Organic salt. I know about that one. Uh, non-GMO stuff. I know that like when you go shopping, there's like a non-GMO sticker that they'll put on things, but it's really funny because like I don't have it on me right now, but I know that like if you look into it, a lot of those foods are actually like made with GMOs. It's really funny.
All right, for that. Anyway, but what is gluten? So gluten free, and actually very often is merged with grain free. So I'm not talking about the people who do it for for celiac reasons. Very often people actually go fully grain free, and when you actually do that, it's actually quite a low carb diet, and you increase the protein. It's an LCHF diet, and then there's paleo. Okay, now paleo, this is where we're supposed to eat like cavemen because agriculture was bad for us, and we have to eat like our Paleolithic ancestors, greater than 12,000 years ago, because this was the natural way of eating it. We're not adapted to agriculture. Look, there are a couple of problems with this argument. It comes from the Fred Flintstone school of Fantasia. Okay, now I'm not going to go. This is not a paleo talk, but the paleo diet has a number of problems. First of all, it assumes one singular Paleolithic people when this is clearly not true because what are you talking about the Inuit on in Greenland? Are you talking about people on the savannah in Africa? Are you talking about those hunter gatherers in the Amazonian rainforest? You're going to eat completely different things, seal blubber or what, or whale or something like that. And maybe on the savannah you're going to be nearly vegetarian given how difficult it is going to be to actually to actually track down a deer. So first of all, it's completely bonkers because there's not one single Paleolithic person. So what are you eating? And secondly, even if you wanted to eat like your Freddie Flintstone cousin, the foods that we eat today are so heavily domesticated; they do not resemble, anything of what we actually ate in the past. So even if we wanted to, we couldn't. Anyway, the paleo diet is high in protein. That's my point. I'm not trying to that. It's high in protein. That's why people stick to it. That's why people lose weight because grains were considered potatoes, starchy vegetables were considered fruits of agriculture. And these are all high in carbohydrates. And so when you actually and refined sugars, when you remove those, you end up having a low carb diet. That is why it actually works. Okay, so if you actually look from a protein perspective, okay, and this is now just I've now just put a little bit more detail in. So the number of calories in the food, bomb calorimetry, then you have calories lost through the feces, then you have nitrogen lost through the wee, and this gives you metabolizable energy. So this is the energy that Atwater calculated and is the side of the pack. What I've now shown you is that with something like protein, is that what Atwater did not take into account was the heat given off during the metabolizing of protein, which is called diet-induced thermogenesis. And then once you've actually done that, which is a great deal, which is significant, you then end up with net metabolizable energy. So this is the energy which is not on the side of the packs, but is what we actually get out, which we then use for our metabolism and our physical activity, our exercises, and our just general day-to-day living. So how about fiber? So there is a coda here for fiber before I close off here. And for fiber, well, look, um, there are many diets which are very high in fiber. So one of the things which I do, okay, in my other job, I moonlight sometimes as a presenter for the BBC. And one of the programs I used to do was a program called Trust Me, I'm a Doctor. And one of the producers one day came as a health program, came in and said, would I examine how healthy it is to be vegan? So there are obviously going to be a number of complicated reasons why people choose to be vegan. Okay, this could be environmental, this could be ethical, be animal welfare, and both are actually entirely legitimate reasons.
I'm kind of on the Mike Israel side of this, which is if I could get things that are indistinguishable uh in nutrients and uh just kind of like taste too from animal product, I would probably be fine switching over to that if it was affordable. That's going to be the biggest problem. The other thing that we kind of have an issue with is it's like I've looked at a lot of these like new vegan things, and it's really funny because they're like, "Oh yeah, yeah, it's not made from meat or whatever, but it's still animal product." So it's like I'm just wondering, like, okay, but I don't think the vegans are buying it. I don't know who's buying it if it's not the vegans, but I think the vegans know it's made with egg, and if they're like hardcore vegan and they have like a very specific reason for being vegan, being the whole I don't want anything to do with any animal product because it's unethical. It's it's not gonna sell, and anecdotally, like outside of major metropolitan areas, I don't think it sells.
For choosing to be vegan. But this was a health program, and so we were trying to look at the health benefits or not of being vegan. So the first question I went, so I went, I said, okay, I'll try it. 1 month, 29 days. Not that I was counting. So the first thing is, are vegan foods just automatically better for you? I guess it's the first question. And if you think about it just a little bit,
Oreos are vegan.
the answer is going to be no, because I could have spent the 29 days eating chips and Oreos, and
He knew it. He got it. He knows.
and no one would have claimed that was a healthy diet. I even found this amazing product. So these products here, bacon rashers, classic snack, blah blah blah. Okay, here we go. Here's the point. So these are bacon rashers with no artificial flavorings or colorings, but yet are entirely vegan. What magical food is this? Anyway, so I figure out what happened. These are no artificial uh, uh, bacon flavorings or colorings. So they probably use turmeric and smoked paprika or something like that. My point is, this is hardly healthy food. Okay, and I could have spent the entire time eating this. So not wanting to be the guy that went on a vegan diet for 29 days and actually gained weight, I decided to go on a plant-based diet. Now, plant-based diet means that you don't eat a lot of refined sugars, and in effect, you eat foods as close to its whole nature as possible. So beans and pulses and grains and that kind of thing. All right. So what were the scores going to do after 29 days? Well, after 29 days on a plant-based diet, because I ended up being plant-based, I ended up losing 4 kilograms of weight almost evenly. My God, I mean that's nearly 10 pounds, 10, 11 pounds. My God, I should start and I should become a food guru. I should be selling a diet.
I'm gonna predict this. This is the keto thing. It's all water weight. That's what happens with keto. I know that part. So that's my prediction right here is that he started this diet and because of the change in diet, he doesn't retain as much water as he used to. So he lost a lot and showed water weight and maybe some actual like body fat and maybe muscle. I don't know. Who knows? But it's going to be mostly water.
But why did I lose weight? And because I went plant-based, the food was not calorically very dense. Okay, meaning that it was very bulky. You got to eat a lot of lentils to match the caloric density of a steak. And
Oh yeah, that is true. I wasn't thinking about it. Also the volume of food. So yeah, maybe it was just all like body fat.
no lentils. They look like flying saucers. They're flying saucers, the shape coming in, and they're flying saucers, the shape coming back out the other side. There's a lot of things. And there's only so much time in a day you have to chew, right? So anyway, so what happens was even though I ate grossly in terms a lot of food in terms of just weight, I absorbed a lot less calories because of the caloric availability of the food, because of the presence primarily of fiber. Now, fiber almost comes exclusively from plants. Okay. So because I was having this plant based diet, I never had so much fiber in my entire life, but I absorbed less calories. That is why I ended up losing weight. Okay. So if you then look at this high fiber way of doing it to reduce the caloric availability of food, so here are diets that are not necessarily plant based, but are high in fiber. Okay. Low GI, glycemic index. Okay. Plant based, or the Mediterranean diet, for example, which are high in a lot of whole grains and stuff. Then you have plant-based diets, effectively plant-based, but with complicated backstories. Okay, so you have the ridiculous alkaline diet. Okay, now alkaline diet, your blood pH is 7.4, so it's slightly alkaline, and so some people think that in order to maintain your healthy blood pH of alkali, you have to eat alkaline foods. Two problems with this. First of all, it completely ignores the presence of your stomach, which, as I said at the beginning, is pH 1.5, acidic. So everything you eat has to go through the stomach. It's acidified in order to begin the digestion process. It then gets released into the small intestine where it's automatically neutralized. Okay. It then goes back up to pH 7. Bang. All foods we eat, regardless of their starting pH, ends up, okay, 1.5 and then pH 7 for our body to actually deal with it. So that's the first thing. So nothing we eat is going to change the pH of our blood. Secondly, if you actually look at what is considered an alkali or acidic food, an alkali, so meat is considered acidic, bad, bad, bad. Okay, that's fine, except it's full of blood, and so surely then it's alkali, but we leave that alone. Okay, then we have, I don't know if you've seen, for example, okay, people who are drinking their high pH water, darling, high pH water, pH 9, it costs a lot of money, but with a spritz of lemon juice in it. Why? Yeah, I know. Just think about it for a second. Why? Because lemons are considered alkali. And if you think about it for 2.2 nanoseconds, you realize that, first of all, lemons and oranges and limes are citrus fruits, so they're full of citric acid. They also have loads of vitamin C, which is ascorbic acid. And so to have the goal to call a lemon alkali.
It's like I just already knew that lemons were acidic. So it's like I am baffled because I've seen alkaline water. I just haven't thought about it.
It makes no sense. My point
It really doesn't make any sense. My brain is breaking. This is like breaking my brain harder than the intermediate biochemistry that we had earlier. And I felt like I was learning there.
is because meat and dairy products are considered acidic, and you have to eat alkali foods, an alkaline diet is effectively a plant-based diet, which is why people stick to it, which is why people lose weight, which is why it works. Then the newest kid on the block that I found anyway is the so-called cert food diet. And the cert food diet is this Adele, the singer. Okay, she disappeared for a couple of years and suddenly reappeared. I don't know, was it a year, 2 years ago? Half the woman she was. She lost all this weight. Okay, everyone was going, "Oh my God, she looks wonderful. She looks, oh my God, she's more of a woman because she's less of a woman now." And she went on the cert food diet. Now, if you actually Google cert food diet and look, it's a plant. It's actually a very restrictive plant-based diet. That is how Adele lost her weight. She ineffectively went on some mumbo jumbo, but that was actually a plant based. I'm not blaming Adele. Adele's probably listening to her nutritionist. But in effect, she was on a plant based diet, which is why she lost weight. It's the same reason why I lost weight when I was on a plant based diet, because it is high in fiber. Now, all of this is fine, okay, because we've been talking about protein, we've been talking about fiber.
Ooh, ooh, ooh! This is the part where I get to this is the part where I get to talk about food deserts because they actually they did research on food deserts. Uh uh where where is it? Da, 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 da. There it is. It's NYU. That's what I'm looking for. Anyways, I'll pull it over when he brings it up because I already know where he's going with this.
But there is and this in very many ways actually is a good, that together with a lower amount of sugar, but protein and fiber are key in terms of the quality of the food that you might actually be eating, which is a problem with, and this term has been doing the rounds recently on TV and in the media, ultra processed foods. So not processed foods. Processed foods is anything bread is cooking is a process. So any cooked food is a processed food. Yogurt is a processed food. Ultra processed foods are industrialized processes in which you apply to a food that we do not do. It's impossible for us to do domestically in our kitchen or in a normal restaurant.
That is actually a term I'm going to totally steal from this guy. Because I think that is a good way of explaining these foods that have an insane amount of excess sugar, and these foods that just have like an insane amount of like just garbage in them that you don't even understand like what it is. And how unhealthy it is. Though at the same time, when people like point to the very long labels of ingredients on the back, some of them you can kind of like intuit what it is, or it's like I can't think of one off the top of my head. Let me see if I have like a food or something over here. Um I don't really have anything over here that's like got a good label that would have those things. Uh, an Arizona tea. No, all that stuff makes sense because it's just tea with sodium citrate, sucralose, absorbent ascorbic acid, which is vitamin C, like he just said, and a special kind of potassium. So it's like I don't know what that first word is, but it's potassium. So I kind of get it.
Okay. Under normal cooking methods, you wouldn't be able to produce an ultra processed food. They require industrial processes. Now, the problem with processing foods to that degree, rather than cooking it or fermenting it or grinding it, which are processes, the problem with the ultra processed industrialized way is that it does a number of things. Primarily, it strips out protein and fiber. Okay, so these foods tend to be lower in protein and fiber, depending on whether or not it's designed to have protein in it to begin with, obviously, but tend to be lower in protein and fiber. Okay, and then the other thing is it tends to strip out flavor when you ultra process something, which means you got to add flavor back in. Where does flavor come from, ladies and gentlemen? Sugar, salt, and fat. Okay, the holy trinity.
Primarily sugar. This is the Robert Lustig thing where um everyone freaks out about the salt and processed foods. I mean these ultra super duper extra processed foods. I'm gonna keep adding adjectives to it, but it's the whole the salt in it scares people because they're like, oh my gosh, it's so much sodium. But really, the super super scary thing is the amount of sugar they hide in your food. It's frightening.
Of flavor, sugar, salt, and fat. You have to add it back in. So the problem with ultra processed foods is that it is inherently lower in protein and fiber. So very, very calorically available. Very, because as I said, those are the two key elements that make a food less calorically available. Okay. and higher in sugar, salt, and fat. Okay, that is the problem with ultra processed foods. Not true for every single ultra processed foods, but across the board, roughly speaking, it's there. The problem with using the not the problem, the good thing about the ultra processed foods, okay, is because it's used you use industrial methods. They're cheap to produce and they're very long they're very long shelf lives, either frozen or not. Okay, so they're very cheap, and as a result, today, certainly in this country, 50% of our calories come from ultra processed foods. Okay, I'm not kidding, it's true.
This is where you get into like the whole ramen noodles are an excellent source of calories if you're desperate or if you're ill. Uh, Ramen noodles are just all salt and nothing else. They have a little bit of carbs from the noodles, but it's literally just a salt broth with noodles. That's all it is. It's just all salt. It doesn't really matter which package you get. I get the spicy ones. Next time I get ramen noodles, next time I'm just like I want something quick and cheap, I'm gonna get the fireball. I'm gonna burn my tongue off.
Okay, but there is a big socioeconomic divide. Okay, if you take that 50% and actually then map it across socioeconomic class, the poorer you are, the more likely you are to have ultra processed foods. Now the whys are going to be complex, but part of the reason is because these are calories which are very, very cheap. Okay, in other words, therefore, anywhere you can probably get close to 900 calories depending on what you're buying for something like a pound. Okay, there are a lot of calories. Now imagine if you're Mrs. Smith. Okay, now look, everyone here, I'm generalizing, but most of you guys listening to me here tonight are going to be like me, painfully middle class. Okay, we are. I'm sorry, I'm going to say it. I'm painfully middle class.
Damn, he just called me the fuck out. He just called me the fuck out. I can't believe it. I want to insult him, but I can't. God, like, like I'll be honest, I'm not bougie, but he's right.
We are not underprivileged human beings. Certainly not. We're not. I'm not saying we're rich. But I'm saying that what are you going to have for tea for dinner when you're done? You know what you're going to have for dinner. And even if you didn't, you're not going to be concerned about it because you could call Deliveroo or Uber Eats or make something. Okay.
I'm not calling. Okay, see, like I'm not rich enough for Uber Eats and stuff like that. I look at it, I'm like, wait, it's gonna cost how much for delivery? I'll pass. I can't afford that. Fuck that shit. See, that's the thing too. Like, I just can't afford to deal with like delivery options. I can go out and get like I can go to Wendy's and get the biggie bag. It's like $5. I can go get that. And it would be cheaper than I could drive to the Wendy's and go get that and it would be cheaper than calling for delivery with the gas and everything. It's like I'm not paying to have someone delivered for me.
You're not going to be worried about it. But if anything, this pandemic has shown us, take the Marcus Rashford push for free school meals for kids, is that there is a scarily large percentage of the population in the UK, the sixth richest country in the world, who are food insecure. Okay, who are not starving, in a famine type of state, but who are food insecure. Okay, so when Mrs. Smith comes home, okay, and she has to have two jobs, two minimum wage jobs in order to keep the family. Okay. So therefore she has no time because she's got to work two jobs. Okay. And she has to buy $2.99 for four pizzas from Iceland or wherever to feed her kids. Who are we to judge? Right. And this is the problem. Who are we to judge when they then have ultra processed foods? And I think this is just a nuance. I thought it was important for me to end with this because I can end with this saying that, well, let's eat more protein, let's eat more fiber. And this is all true. But how do we then apply that more equitably so that we can improve the health of the diet to everyone? And I think it's unhelpful to say, please replace your chocolate bar with a banana. Look, sometimes life demands a chocolate bar, sometimes life demands a banana. The question is, can you make a healthier chocolate bar? Okay, and I think that is the question we got.
We do have healthier chocolate bars. The problem is they cost twice as much. So that's the problem. uh,
You're never going to make a chocolate bar healthy, but can you make a healthier chocolate bar? Okay. So, couple of last thoughts. So, guys, we cannot fear food. Okay. Is it true that the vast majority of diet-related illnesses today are sorry? Is it true that the vast majority of non-infectious diseases that we're facing today, we're clearly in the middle of an infectious disease pandemic, is it true that non-infectious disease is diet related? It is. Okay, obesity, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure. So we need to fix our diet. But we shouldn't do this by fearing food. And fearing food, this is Gwyneth Paltrow's goop. I don't want to drive clicks, but there we go. Which is, and she's trying to sell your leanest livable weight. That's like how to stay as skinny as possible without dying, as far as I can check. And by the way, I gave another talk, but I raised this point at the New Scientist live before the whole shooting match shut down. End of 2019. Oh, those halcyon days. And the mayor and journalists picked it up. So this picture I took from the Independent, which they spliced together, thinking that I had some beef. Gwyneth Paltrow and Cambridge geneticist has a beef. Dude, I've never met Gwyneth Paltrow. Anyway, this is fearing food. What have I spent the last 45 minutes talking to you about? Understanding food. What is it made of? How does our body deal with it? I love food, ladies and gentlemen. I love food. We need to love our food more, understand our food more, just eat a little bit less of it. So, why don't calories count? Here are some important points. We eat food, not blinking calories. All right. We eat food and our body then extracts the calories from the food and that takes energy, that takes effort, that takes time. Okay. Which is why we talk about the quality of food and not the calories. We focus too much on weight. Some of us have to lose weight, but we need to focus more on our health, and then your weight will then take care of itself. So look, this is the book. Okay, why calories don't count. I appreciate it if you're interested and want to find out more. To go and have a look at it. So, what should we count instead of calories? I'm almost giving you the punchline at the end here. I think we need to worry about our protein amount, but there is a sweet spot. Okay, 16%. When I say protein, don't think steaks automatically. It can include steaks, but I'm talking about beans, pulses, tofu. Okay, any source of protein, fish. Fiber. We in the West eat something like 15 to 16 grams of fiber a day. We
my doctor's already told me I gotta get that up.
need at least 30, more the merrier. We don't eat anywhere close to the amount of fiber we actually need. Free sugars. Okay, so these are the sugars that are added, which involves the powdered stuff or agave nectar or honey. Anything you add rather than actually stuck within the fruit. We need to try and limit to less than 5% of our energy intake a day. Okay, and we need to consider, really, ladies and gentlemen, some meat-free days. Look,
I've done that, yeah. My main problem is like usually what just where I am. It's just easiest to have some form of animal protein, and a lot of times it's just tuna. So I don't know what the impact of tuna is on the environment, but I can eat tuna a lot. I try not to eat too much of it though, because I know it has like mercury and stuff in it. But I'm actually really impressed with this video. My favorite part is just the way he handled that little bit about the economic differences, like the economic divide. The way he handled this, he didn't bring up food deserts, which I have an article up here that does like explain. I'll even link it below, but it does explain like it's really not the food desert. It's the fact. It is the fact that what's going on. It's not that people can't. So the article that I'll link below, it goes into how like just because there's not like a supermarket within like walking distance, okay, most people still drive. Most people, regardless of economic class, they drive. They have some way of traveling within a 5 mile radius fairly easily. And what happens when you introduce a grocery store with fresh produce, with fresh meat into areas that you would call a food desert? Um, what happens is those people that this is supposed to help, it actually doesn't help them in the same way. It's a convenience because the store is closer, but they're still buying the same foods. They're buying the ultra processed foods, as he says. And what it is it's entirely convenience because you're buying foods that are. I think one of my fans just died, but I'm not entirely sure. It just stopped spinning, and I don't know because it's just a live thing. But usually, like my front fans, they come off and on all the time, but this one just totally stopped. Maybe I'll come back on. Hopefully, it does. Oh well. Anyways, oh yeah, it's come back on. Yeah, it did the thing. That must be the one I set to detect the wrong temperature of my computer. That computer took me forever to buy the parts for, by the way. I'm so glad I built it when I did. I built it before uh I built it before the graphics card prices went up. I should have gotten like a 2000 series, but it was like $700 at the time and I was like, "You know what? This other one that's like half the price, the 1660. I'm going to take that one because it'll run things pretty well still. I'm not doing anything crazy with it. And I'm still really happy with getting it because it runs 1440p and I only recently got a 1440p monitor as a Christmas gift to myself. Well, not really a Christmas gift. It was like I'd set aside my Christmas money and I didn't know what I was gonna do with it. And I eventually just set it aside, set aside money from work, and I bought a 1440p monitor. It's beautiful, by the way. Playing games. That's besides the point. That's besides the point. Uh, Food deserts. Yeah. Look at me. Look at me talking about my fancy computer while also like explaining like this strange plight that we find ourselves in. It's the fact that these ultra processed foods, so back on topic, uh, these ultra processed foods are very convenient. You can throw them in a microwave. You don't have to heat up an oven or anything. You can just rush it. You can just go done in 5 minutes or less. I heated it up in the microwave. I didn't have to think about it at all. And it's just one of these things where it's just entirely done out of convenience, not because of lack of availability. It's because of lack of time. That is actually like the key factor. And this is where it could go even more extreme if you wanted to, where um, fatherlessness in America, like if you have a one parent household, it's typically the mother that gets the kids because of the way the family court system is structured. And that just leads into like a lower income situation and it causes headaches, especially like if the father decides to like not support the mother and then there's all sorts of things with that and there's so many ways you could go into this. And at the end of the day, what it just is that I would personally come down to the conclusion that what we need to do, more importantly than anything else, we need to teach kids how to cook. Because let me tell you, cooking for myself did more for me than anything else as far as dieting goes. Cooking the foods that I ate, not eating anything from a box, just cooking the foods I ate for the most part, really was like one of the main things that really helped me with weight loss. And while he does conclude with, well, we eat food, not calories, I think that calorie counting does work. I think that there's there's too many people in the US. We've reached 50% obesity and probably higher because that number counts like everyone that's 20 and older, not 18 and older. So we've reached 50% adult obesity in the US, roughly. We've we have a estimate that like 75% of us are in some way, shape, or form overweight. And what we need to do is we need to figure out, well, what's the cause of this? And it's one of these things where it's hard to say what needs to be said on the like childhood obesity front, because in some ways like you would have to be a mean person to just go out and say you need to feed your kids better, or you need to like solve that problem, because this infectious disease that is going around has been killing children. It's been killing children under the age of 18, minors. And if you've looked at these articles, if you've looked at just the images coming out with these articles, you child who is currently suffering from the disease. You see the child that has uh died from the disease. You've seen them, and there's just this running trend where they are significantly overweight, and it's one of these things where there's just a level of neglect involved, I feel, because don't if you don't address when your child is reaching, like, I would say, when your child is 13 and they're reaching 200 pounds, it's all about their like actual height and everything too. It's like it's one of those things that's just really really obvious, and when you look at it and you see like children with, you could eyeball it and say their BMI is definitely above 30. Okay, that's when you really really need to take a step back and like figure out what's going on there. And so it's not like a it's not like they're a bad parent in the sense that they're not giving their kids good values or anything. All parents strive to do that for the most part. But, you know, just going on this whole idea that you can't judge people, you can't ask them like to consider things. You can't ask them to do something like meal prep. You can't ask them to do something like teach their kids to cook, you know. It's like, oh, this person works 2 jobs. They get a day off eventually. You have to teach your kids to cook. You have to teach your kids how to eat right. And if parents don't have time for that because they're all too busy working multiple jobs, then what we need to do is we need to educate them on that in the schools. And this is not a problem that's like a UK problem. That's not a problem that's a US problem. It is a Western culture problem where we are constantly like forgetting this idea. And this is like the thing I've liked about a lot of Greg Doucette's videos. He goes into this whole detail about how, relationships are people, not food. And it's one of these things that I realize, like, combining his stuff with stuff that Alan Roberts has said. We have all these things that we do that are just so interconnected with food that if we just changed it up a little bit and we said, like, hey, instead of having a bunch of food and sitting in this boring little boardroom to have a meeting and having just cookies and cake available, what if we just went for a hike? what if we went for a hike in the woods while talking? Okay. What if we just went for a walk? What if we did something a little bit active while we were discussing something? And it's just these little ideas, and I don't know. There's so many ways to address this, and I do think that at the end of the day, like at a certain point, when you do have teenagers that are, you know, old enough to know how to do things on their own, okay? Like it's not even that they have to be like 13 or anything. You could teach very young children how to cook. And that's really what I'm looking at here. I'm just thinking my head is just going straight into teach these kids how to cook so that way if mom doesn't have time to cook for them, if mommy can't cook my chicken nuggies while I'm stealing other people's YouTube content for money so I can get a mortgage on a $3 million house in Los Angeles. Um, if that's what's going on, uh, I guess you just have to learn how to cook. You have to teach people how to cook, and if you taught them how to cook, they could probably make really good, really healthy meals. And there's so much information available on how to cook. You could just take a day and you could go to a library. You could go somewhere. You could tell them while they're at school, look for a recipe and we'll get the ingredients for it and you can cook it while I'm at work. Just and on like the conclusion of this, I just want to say like the idea that calorie counting doesn't work. I don't really think that's true. I think it just matters like what kind of person you are. Okay. Cuz I know that calorie counting helps me kind of keep track of where I am in the day. I know that that has helped me a lot so far in dropping weight significantly. And it has also helped me significantly in keeping that weight off. And I think that if I wasn't counting them in some way, I would still be, where I was over a year ago now. I would still have all these weird health problems. And I'm like, oh, I don't know why these little tiny things are always like coming at me. I don't know why. Like sometimes I just like need to take like a breather because I just can't breathe for whatever reason. I don't know why. I feel gross in the mornings. I don't know why I have pain in my knees. Just little tiny things. If I think if people knew what the end result of uh losing weight was, it would be easier. And I think that it really does depend on where you are and what you do. Because if you're not someone that wants to count calories, fine. But you can do very simple things where you're just like, I'm going to eat less and move more. And that's what weight loss is at the end of the day. It's like, and so I'm glad that he goes into that. I'm glad that this isn't a crazy person that is under the assumption that you can gain weight in a vacuum if it's all carbs. uh it's one of those things like I didn't know what to expect with this video, and I didn't know like if I I knew from the description that it was actually like a legitimate person, so I was really happy with the video. Uh so um I'm rambling now. It's like very early in the morning. I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm gonna have a very, very happy birthday for myself when I wake up. Good night.